Thank you, General. Mr. Ed.
Chairman Burr, Vice Chairman Warner, thank you for the members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today about active measures. Understanding cyber operations in the 21st century is impossible without first understanding intelligence operations in the 20th century. Attributing and countering disinformation today is therefore also impossible without first understanding how the United States and its allies attributed and countered hundreds of active measures throughout the Cold War. Nobody summarized this dark art of disinformation better than Colonel Rolf Wagenbreth from the Stasi, who headed the Department X there. He said, I quote, "A powerful adversary can only be defeated through a sophisticated, methodical, careful, and shrewd effort to exploit even the smallest cracks within our enemies and within their elites." The tried and tested way of active measures is to use an adversary's existing weaknesses against himself, to drive wedges into pre-existing cracks. The more polarized a society, the more vulnerable it is. And America in 2016, of course, was highly polarized, with lots of cracks to drive wedges into. But not old wedges. Improved high-tech wedges that allowed the Kremlin's operatives to attack their target faster, more reactively, and at a far larger scale than ever before. But the Russian operatives also left behind more clues and more traces than ever before. And assessing these clues and operations requires context. First, in the past 60 years, and we talked about this already this morning, active measures became the norm. The Cold War likely saw more than 10,000 active measures across the world. This is a remarkable figure. The lull in the 1990s and 2000s, I think, was an exception. Second, in the past 20 years, aggressive Russian digital espionage campaigns, and Kevin Mandia mentioned one of them, became the norm as well. The first major state-on-state campaign was called Moonlight Maze, and it started in 1996. In 2000, a shift in tactics became apparent, especially in Moscow's military intelligence agency, GRU. A once careful, risk-averse, and shrewd and stealthy espionage actor became more careless, risk-taking, and error-prone. One particularly revealing slip-up resulted in a highly granular view of just one slice of GRU targeting between March 2015 and May 2016 in the lead-up to the election. That slice contained more than 19,000 malicious links targeting nearly 7,000 individuals across the world, really. Third, in the past 2 years now, coming closer to the present, Russian intelligence operations began to combine those two things, hacking and leaking. By early 2015, military intelligence was targeting defense and diplomatic entities at high tempo. Among the targets were the private accounts, for example, of the current chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, or current Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, Daniel Ginsburg, or the current U.S. Ambassador to Russia, John Teft, and his predecessor, Michael McFaul. A large number of diplomatic and military officials in Ukraine, Georgia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, and many countries bordering Russia, especially their defense attachés. All, I add, are legitimate and predictable targets for a military intelligence agency. Russian intelligence curiously also targeted inside Russia, critics inside Russia, for example, the hacker group Shaltai-Baltai. In early 2015, GRU breached successfully not just the German parliament, but also the Italian military and the Saudi foreign ministry. Between June 15 and November 16, at least 6 different front organizations appeared, very much Cold War style, to spread some of the stolen information to the public in a targeted way. Finally, in the past year, the timeline here in the US election campaign began to align. Between March 10th and April 7, GRU targeted at least 109 full-time Clinton campaign staffers. These are only full-time corps staffers, not their volunteers. These are not even counted here. Russian intelligence targeted Clinton's senior advisor, Jake Sullivan, in at least 14 different attempts beginning on 19 March. GRU targeted even Secretary Clinton's personal email account, but the data show that she did not fall for the trick and didn't actually reveal her password. Military Intelligence Agency GRU also targeted DNC staffers between March 15 and April 11. The timing lines up nearly perfectly. About 1 week later, after the events that I just mentioned, the DC Leaks website was registered, getting ready to spread these data publicly. The overlap between individuals hacked by GRU and leaked on DC Leaks is nearly perfect. Out of 13 named leaked victims, the available forensic evidence identifies 12 as targeted by GRU, with the exception of George Soros, by the way. But a narrow technical analysis would miss the main political and ethical challenge. Soviet bloc disinformation specialists preferred the art of exploiting what was then called unwitting agents. So there is no contradiction in their reading between being an honest American patriot and at the same time furthering the cause of Russia. In the peace movement in the 1980s, we saw that people were genuinely protesting, say, the NATO double-track decision, but at the same time advancing Russian goals. There is no contradiction. 3 types of unwitting agents, and I would like to close with that, stand out. WikiLeaks, Twitter, the company itself, and I'm happy to expand later, and over-eager journalists aggressively covering the political leaks while neglecting or ignoring their provenance. In 1965, the KGB's Grand Master of Disinformatia, General Ivan Agayants, inspected his active measures outpost in Prague, a particularly effective and aggressive one. And he said, quote, "Sometimes I am amazed how easy it is to play these games. If they did not have if they did not have press freedom, we would have to invent it for them." Later, the Czech operative that he was speaking with in that very moment defected to the United States and testified in Congress. And I quote him to close. He said, "The press should be more cautious with anonymous leaks. Anonymity is a signal indicating that the big Russian bear might be involved." Thank you.
I want to thank all 3 of you for your testimony, and I think it's safe to say that this is probably a foundational hearing for our investigation, to have 3 people with the knowledge that you do, and I hope when you do get that second call or third call that you'll sit down with us as we have peeled back the onion a little bit and we have technical questions. Though we've got some expertise on the committee, you can look at a lot of gray hair and realize that my technology capabilities are very shallow, and that many of us struggle to understand not just what they can do, but even the lingo that's used, and the dark side of the web and the open side of the web. These things are amazing and would be shocking to most people. I'm going to turn to the Vice Chairman for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me echo what you said. I mean, I think we've got an incredible panel of experts, and you're here because of that expertise. So I've got 3 questions that I'd like to try to get through. The first one, hopefully, fairly quickly. Based upon your expertise and knowledge,
as a person.
Well, Dr. Ridd, you talked about poor IT and cyber hygiene in the government space, and I think some of this can be as simple as updating your antivirus software, scanning your machine periodically and the like. But let me just mention the specific hack of the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. I mentioned it in an earlier panel. 21 million Americans had their personal information stolen in government custody. So even though they may have considered it private information, they were forced to give it to the government for security clearance or some other purpose. and now some foreign state actor through a cyber hack has access to 21 million private records, including more than 5 million sets of fingerprints. Is that the kind of information that cyber actors, either criminals or espionage agents from foreign governments, would use to further collect espionage or to steal or to implant ransomware or something in a machine or in a business and then shake them down for money?
Yes, absolutely. The more information, the more confidential information also you have, the easier it is to craft a spear phishing, a targeted email, a deceptive email, a forged email, so to speak. In my written testimony, I included a number of samples, a number of exhibits.
I saw that,
including John Podesta's.
Thank you for doing that. Well, one of the we don't have control over everybody's private computer or what kind of software they use, but we do have something to say, I think, about what the United States government does. And I think one of the things we need to be attentive to is to make sure the United States government networks are adequately protected. I know, General Alexander, you had something to do about that at the NSA, but you didn't have the ability to protect all of this other information. Let me just ask, I just have a couple of seconds, and since you're here, General Alexander, we're going to have to take up the reauthorization of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, particularly Section 702. And I just would like to ask you, just since we have you here, a little bit about its importance to detecting and countering foreign cyber activity, and if you would also include in your answer the privacy protections that are a very, very important part of that, and oversight that you got to see firsthand in your capacity as head of NSA and Cyber Command.
I think that's the most important program that's out there, especially in counterterrorism. And I can give you a real quick example. Najibul Azazi in Denver was detected by that specific authorization. NSA saw that, provided it to the FBI, and Najibul Azazi was the individual in 2009 who was driving across the country to New York City when they arrested the individual in New York City based off of the other program. And they found several backpacks in various states of readiness to attack the New York City subway, done by that program. I think that's the most effective counterterrorism program we have, and I think it will be also effective in some areas for cybersecurity, although I don't have any examples off the top of my head here.
Could you conclude your answer and talk a little bit about minimization and other privacy protections? Because I think that's important to the American people to know that we're very vigilant and diligent in that area as well.
Yeah, it's interesting.